Okay, so this morning I wanted to come into the office and rip off Jason Mock with my marker board, not a chalkboard, and it's not as colorful or pretty, and my handwriting sucks. But I wanted to illustrate the process of stock cropping. Hopefully I've kind of whet some of your appetites with this concept of integrating livestock together in a cornfield at the same time. But I wanted to take a little bit of time this week to make a video that explains how we got to this point. And to make sure I make clear that this is not just my project. I'm the public face for it, but this project represents several different people collaborating together who have been influenced by people over the last 10 to 12 years by lots of other really creative folks. And so I created this pinwheel display to kind of walk you through the timeline of the relationships to give a little bit better context to the story. So here it goes. So 2009, the year that a guy by the name of Sheldon Stevemer and I became friends. And we became friends mainly for one reason. I had an interest in strip till, and Sheldon and his brother were some of the only guys within 50 miles of me that were doing it. And so we started a relationship kind of based around that practice. I was getting into farming, and I was very interested in integrating that into our farming operation. The other thing that fits into the stock cropping piece is, obviously our involvement in livestock. Sheldon was a pig farmer, or still is a pig farmer with his brother, and I've been kind of a hobby livestock producer. So in 2009, that was the first year that I got chickens for my family. We got some broilers. I wanted to give my kids, who were I think 4 and 5 at that time, an experience around having responsibility of chores and understanding where their food comes from. And so we raised our own chickens, and we did all our own butchering. And I had little girls at the ages of 4 and 5 that knew how to rip a heart out of a chicken, which is a thing I recommend to anybody. So in 2010, we moved on here, and that was the first year I actually started farming with my dad. So I came into farming during the boom, when it was a matter of figuring out how many hundreds of dollars an acre you were going to make with $6 corn, which was really kind of an obscene time when you look back in the current context. But that's when I came into it, so in 2010. That was also the year that Sheldon, I think, played around for the first time with strip intercropping, which is part of this system. So strip intercropping is the practice of planting, strips of corn and soybeans, and that was influenced by one of the first names I want to throw out, which was a guy by the name of Clay Mitchell that farms in eastern Iowa. And Clay had been doing intercropping on his farm for several years prior to that. One of the names that influenced Sheldon's interest in it, and he did it with success there in 2010. The other name, while I'm talking about intercropping and row spacing stuff, that I wanted to recognize is a guy by the name of Bob Recker. So Bob Recker, if you Google Cedar Valley Innovations, Bob is a retired engineer from John Deere, I believe, over by Waterloo, Iowa. And we went to one of his field days in the, I think, 2011, 2012 time frame, perhaps, to interact and learn from people that were playing around this wide row corn or 60-inch corn thing that a lot of folks are trying and experimenting with now 8 or 10 years later. And that was really interesting. We'd seen some of the benefits of the skip row 60-inch corn piece, and we wanted to play around with that more. And Bob has been a really good resource for farmers for sharing information around that kind of biohack with giving full sunlight up and down a corn canopy. So I wanted to recognize him as well. 2011 was the first year I actually implemented strip till on my farm, and kind of this journey toward, when I got into it, I really wasn't thinking about soil health, and biological systems. I was thinking more about efficiency, and I just thought it looked cool, to be honest with you, which is a really lame reason, but I'm glad there's been all these other things that have come that I've learned along the way with that practice. 2011 was also the first year that we brought pig butchering and raising. So I would get a couple pigs, raise them up, get my buddies together at the end of the year, and we figured out, literally the first year we had a pig on a hook and a book, and we sat there step by step figuring out how to butcher it. And This has been something that's evolved into a yearly communal process. It's a lot of fun. Get together with friends and family. We make meat for our families, and it's been a really great thing, but also something, a key cog into this whole idea of creating connections with the products on your farm directly with consumers. So 2011 was the genesis of that. 2012, I played around with intercropping on my own farm, demonstrated to myself that this outside row thing was real, played with it pretty hard, increased the row population on the outside rows, pumped more nitrogen, was able to demonstrate I could grow 50 bushels more corn in that system versus a conventional block right next to it. So 2012 was intercropping for me. 2013, we took the experiences that we played with, the 60-inch corn thing, and Sheldon had the idea of making twin row 60-inch corn. So instead of forcing so many plants into one row, let's make a twin row and still gap it at 60 inches so that we've got this solar corridor, and let's put cover crops in between, which we didn't know exactly how that was going to all work out. Unfortunately, it happened during 2013, which was a crap weather year, northern Iowa, southern Minnesota, with a lot of rain. So we didn't get a great test out of that year, but we got to at least see how the concept would behave. And I still think this idea for folks that are in large-scale corn and soybean production is still something that has a lot of potential. So 2013 was also the year I got introduced to cover crops, how to prevent planting, and that was an accident on how that came about. But since then, I've introduced cover crops on all my own acres and played around with them and seen the benefits of the increased, soil health from creating a system and trying to keep biology alive in the soil as many months out of the year as possible. So the next couple years, we really didn't do a lot. We kept on with the systems. We kind of got into a groove, liking what we were doing. But the next name I wanted to mention was in 2017 with a guy that, if anybody follows or is enjoying what we're talking about here, Jason Mock out in Gaston, Indiana, is one of the guys that helped bring this whole spectrum of thinking about ag differently to light when he came on social media and started sharing some of his thoughts and his brainstorms publicly on Twitter. And so we've had a lot of fun following him, and in 2017 I think was the first time we reached out and talked to him a little bit. But this spring we've also been talking with Jason, sharing our ideas and bouncing some things off him, and wanted to recognize him because he's really been a force and really good about throwing ideas out, letting people see what he's doing, sharing that with and see what comes back. And been a lot of fun following all the stuff that he's doing on his farm. So the next 2 years I've got up here on 2018 and 2019, they were struggle years. They were not fun years to farm in northern Iowa and southern Minnesota. We had a lot of weather struggles, and commodity prices were on the decline. And Sheldon and I had lots of conversations over those, the last 2 years about, we got to figure something else out if we're going to stay in business as farmers and farming at the scale we were, because it wasn't fun. The amount of money we were making was not worth the squeeze for the amount of effort and sacrifice that we were having to put in. And so we started thinking about this intercrop piece again that we'd played with in these other years, of how could we bring that in and actually scale that up, and what crops could that include, and how could the architecture or the arrangement in the field be, and what do the economics look like. And so Sheldon built spreadsheets, and we would have conversations, all hours of the day, thinking about how can we tweak this thing. And we always got to the point where it's like, well, it might work, but the marginal benefit of doing it might not be worth all the extra effort compared to kind of the status quo. Until one magical morning here, as we get up to the present year in 2020, in February, when Sheldon was talking with one of his friends up in central Minnesota, a guy by the name of Lance Peterson. And Sheldon was having the same kind of brainstorming session with Lance up there, and telling them the kind of the problems, and all of a sudden one morning Lance had an idea and texted Sheldon and said, hey, instead of trying to figure out a crop to make this intercrop thing work where you can make enough money, he's like, what if you introduce livestock in a mobile pen in between your strips of corn? And just like that, the switch had been thrown and the idea was there. We finally found the missing cog in the piece to actually solve. I mean, the livestock introduction into this intercrop modeling, that was the thing that we'd been missing the entire time. And so that just created a firestorm of brainstorming and texting back and forth of, well, we could do this, and then we could do this, and we should have multiple species of livestock so we have biodiversity, and we'll put it all together in one mobile unit, and we'll be solar powered, and maybe have autonomous advancement through the field. And so all of that stuff came forth basically one morning in February this year, which led to the next 2 months of thinking and brainstorming further of, you can create an idea like this on paper and it sounds fun and entertaining, but it's another thing to actually put it into practice and engineer it and make it work. And so that's what we've been working on, and we've got the baseline, started out in the field. We're working right now on actually designing it and in engineering. We're actually starting to cut metal to make the mobile barn here this week, and going to probably be leaking some pictures and maybe a little bit of video of that process. But that's going to be the key cog to this thing, is figuring out how you can run animals inside of a cornfield and not have a disaster happen, and all the challenges that come with that. So the last thing I wanted to make mention is somebody on here. I got the name Joe Bassett from Dawn Equipment written on, and Joe I've always really enjoyed him over the last 10 years that I've been aware, or known him a little bit. And Joe gave a talk in February. It was about, I think, a week or two after we'd come up with this concept, and we talked at this Agritech conference in Germany, and I saw somebody had shared his speech on Twitter, or his presentation, and it really hit home. He talked about how agriculture has worked to make things really, really easy for farmers, and his question was, are farmers any better off at the end of the day with having everything be easy? And his contention was the future of agriculture is going to be more complex and get back to the basics of utilizing nature in conjunction with agricultural systems. And that's what he's trying to do with his company, Underground Agriculture, which is doing a lot of really cool things in this space as well. And that idea of, if we're left with nothing but doing easy tasks, how much value can we have? And that's what I got from Joe's presentation. I want to create a system, something like either stock cropping or something like stock cropping, that leaves the farmer with more at the end of the day than what we have right now. And that might be more difficult, it might be more intensive, it might take more outside of the box thinking, but for the people that are willing to do that, that's what we're trying to achieve with this project. So that's a lot of stuff to cover. I'm at like 14 minutes already in this video. It's crazy, but I like to talk. So again, this is the pinwheel spectrum of time. The people that have influenced this is not just me. It's these ideas and projects like this are a result of the sum of your parts and the people that have influenced you. And I've been really, really fortunate to have a lot of great friends and relationships that have led to the evolution of this idea. But now you understand the back history, the people that are in play, the people that have helped influence it, and hopefully it makes a little bit more sense as we move forward. So that's it for today. Happy Mother's Day, and we will have more stuff to come in the coming week. One thing that I forgot to mention that's really important for this week's video is that this week's video was sponsored by the JRC Llama Factory in Ringstead, Iowa. JRC Llamas, in your face.